Hello and welcome to this video. Today we're going to be talking about dashes, pages, configurations, and just how much data do you really need when you're driving on track. Hello and welcome to this video. Now we're going to be talking about dashes, configurations, and pages, but most importantly we're going to be talking about how much data do you really need when you're in the race car, and most importantly, what is the maximum amount of information, which could actually be portrayed as the minimum amount of data used to be able to make you as effective as you can be when you're out on track. And that will actually change depending on your circumstances and what you're actually doing. Are you qualifying? Are you racing? Are you in an endurance race? And so all sorts of different types of configuration and dashes, are possible. But the question is how many people will use them? And, am I one of them? And so I've long believed that I've been a bit behind the times when it comes to the configuration of dashes. Only last year, as I went through 2020 and I attended a lot of webinars and a lot of trial and error with dashes, especially those connected to sim racing, have allowed me to be able to identify that this is a real art form and it's something that is very specific and custom to the individual. But I wanted to find out if others are configuring their dashes for their particular purposes. So I went onto Facebook and on the AiM users group, I'll put a link in the description box below if you want to be able to join, and asked the question, how many dashes do you use? Do you use multiple dashes and for what purposes? And I was interested to see that at least 50% of the people who responded said, yeah, absolutely we do. We have configurations for different purposes, some for the engineer, some for the driver, some based on pages, and I think some based on configurations as well. So it was a really interesting response that I got. So clearly I've got to be able to address the errors of my ways. So what I've got now is a demonstration for you all, which talks you through my experiences configuring the dashes and how I'm going to set them up for 2021, and to talk about some of the experiences that I've had on track and why I'm configuring the dashes the way that I am. So enjoy this demonstration. So here I am in Race Studio 3. I'm actually in the Race Studio 3 beta, which includes the analysis section, but any of these demonstrations today will work in any instance of Race Studio 3. And what I'm going to talk about is not only configuring the number of pages you have to be able to give you different information, but actually configuring the device that you have differently based upon the objective that you're looking at. So here I have the EVO4S configurations for my Formula Ford. Now, on the left-hand side, you may notice that I've got different configurations for different devices. For example, my MXP Strada is associated with the configurations that I have for iRacing. And if you're interested in learning more about this, there's a link in the top right-hand side, which will take you to how to configure a device for iRacing. But today, we're going to talk about my actual race car, and it's a Formula Ford. And for so long, I have had configurations that have been just one config, and it's something that I have found to be the only way that I've really used data, and I've had multiple pages. But the challenge is, and I've found this more and more, I actually found this last year at some races in particular, is that if you want to scroll through those pages while you're actually racing, it's quite a commitment when you're doing whatever miles an hour to be able to reach down and say, was it page 2, was it page 3 or 4 or 5? And I soon realized that what I need is the bare minimum of information on screen so that I can concentrate on the matter at hand, which is either qualifying or racing. And so this year I've created 2 different instances with different information. I'm just going to talk you through how I've set that up. And so I'm going to load up the configuration for qualifying first and show you what I've got set up here, because there are different information. So here's the setup that exists for an EVO4S. If anyone knows, this doesn't have an actual dash. You have to have a dash connected to an EVO4S, and so I have a GS dash, and I'll show you that in just a minute. But so what we've got is a few key parameters that I want to be able to look at here as we go through the setup. The first is that I want to be able to go to the CAN expansions here, because if I click on here, you can see that I have a GS dash attached, and that's my expansion here. And it will show me 2 things. It'll show me the display and the shift lights and alarms that I have set up. So let's talk about the display first. Now, after a couple of years of racing in the UK and understanding how the Formula Ford series works at the places I race, the way that it is a weekend works, or typically a day, is that you turn up, you qualify, and then you race. There's no practice. If you want to practice, it's a different day. And so the key there is I need to be able to get sometimes 2 laps, one for the first race, one for the second. And I need to be able to get the best lap times I can in the shortest period of time. And so what I've opted to do here is to be able to set up a qualifying setup. So here we have how I've set up qualifying for this year, and it's all I need to know. What is my best time? What is the plus minus of the lap that I'm on against that best time, and the number of laps, because the number of laps is indicative of how long or how what sort of period of time I have to be able to get those laps in. And so this is all I need, and this is all I'm going to have as the first page of the dash. Now, many of you may be thinking, well, you don't have a tachometer or an RPMs or anything on there, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit, but I want to look at some of the other pages first. And so the next thing I want to be able to look at as well is I need my engine information on a click of a page change. And so that's the next thing I have here. And if I click to have a look, here's where I've got RPMs, water temperature and oil pressure, just a little bit of engine information that's available. And then the last thing that I have is tire pressure. Now, the reason I keep this tire pressure as a page is because one of the experiences I had last year was that I rolled over some debris or drove over some debris, and I wanted to be able to get an idea as to whether I had a puncture, for example. The other thing I also had last year is I had some malfunction of one of my suspension parts, and so the question was it a flat tire or was it something more serious? So having this here is useful, but it's on the third click. You probably wouldn't go to either of these 2 pages in the 8 laps or so that you have to be able to get qualifying, and so I want to focus there. Now, it's very simple information on screen, and so what I want to be able to know as well is a few other components, like I still want to be able to see some shift information, and I still want to see alarms. So if I go to the shift lights, you can see that I've got set up here. I still have my shift lights that are available. I still have all of my alarms that are here that tell me if something's happening with the car. For example, if oil pressure drops, I can click the page and I can see what's happening here with oil pressure or water, whatever need be. So that's always going to be there to tell me what's going on. I just don't need to necessarily have that on the first page I'm looking at. And it's interesting, this is the page that I've run for so long previously, which is actually the default page that is with the device. So that's there. Now you may notice there's some other things on here. And if I scroll down, one of the things that I've actually set up here is I have added some information about the pressure. Now, using some analysis that we've put together, if you're interested in this, put a comment in the box below. We'll probably do a video on this later on in the year, is that we've started to identify which pressure creates the maximum amount of lateral grip. And so what I've got here is I've got an alarm that comes on that says if the front left, right left, front rear, right rear are at the perfect pressure for grip, if all 4 of those green lights are lit up, that means that at that particular point the tires are in their optimal range for qualifying and getting the best possible lap. Now, I probably wouldn't need this for the race, I would just be racing, but for qualifying I want to know that conditions are absolutely where they could be and I'm going to get the maximum out of the tires, and so I have that there as well. So that's what I have set up for qualifying. Now, the race is going to be different, and so what I've got is I've got different information for the race because I'm going to want to be able to see information that's different. So I'm going to go back to the top and I'm going to click on all here and I'm going to load up the race configuration. And so what will happen is when I come in and I download the data, I will plug in the device and I will upload a new configuration to the EVO4S for the race. Now, it's in many ways the same sort of basic setup, but if I go to the CAN expansions again, which is where my GS dash is set up, notice now I have some slightly different pieces of information that are here. I've brought my tachometer back in. I have the number of laps because races are usually based upon the number of laps, so 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever they need be, but it's usually lap based. I've got the lap time I've just run, not necessarily the best lap time, just getting an idea of what the lap time was. I've got water temperature and oil pressure because I want to be able to see as I run through the race certain pieces of information that I can glance down and make sure everything's working out okay. Same thing, I've got the tire pressure for the similar reasons that I talked about previously, which is I still want to be able to see if I've got a puncture, if I've rolled over something, something's happening with the car. So I left that one there as well. So those are the two dashes that I just have for the race. Now, this may change because, we'll determine as I experience this around the track if that is going to be adequate or I need more information. But interestingly, if I go to shift lights, I've changed the variables that are on here based upon alarms. I now have the same alarms that are set for certain pieces of information. Water temperature's high, oil pressure's low, I've had an over rev. Low battery is an interesting one. On a Formula Ford, the battery is charged before you go out. It doesn't charge while you're running. So you want to be able to know if you've got a duff battery and one that's, that's working on. But if I have a look here, I've got additional trigger here for the race. And notice down here, I've got something here called the cool engine trigger. Now, this is not that my engine is super cool. More so, this is a warning to me that I need to cool the engine. And this is based upon something called a status variable. Now, we don't talk about status variables very often, but this is designed based upon some analysis that I did last year in a hot day. If you're in the draft behind somebody or you're very close to somebody on a lap, are you getting enough cool air to the car to be able to keep the temperatures in check? And so what I did up here was I created a status variable which allows me to be able to say, you can see it here, when the RPMs are higher than 5,000, so effectively that's when the engine's really working, but over 90 miles an hour, that's arguably down a straightaway where typically you'd be looking to cool the engine. And the temperature's over 88 degrees centigrade. Anything over 90 is really, really something that you need to pay attention to. So I need it less than 90. If it's over 88, then it will trigger this thing called the cool engine warning. And if I go back to my, I'm just going to click on cancel here. And if I go back to my CAN expansions and my shift lights, I have an alarm that gives me a pop-up engine that says, message that says cool the engine, and this will appear until the condition's not met. This means that if I'm racing against somebody very close and the engine's getting too hot because I'm right behind them, then I might want to duck out at times and be able to cool the engine down with some cooler air because I'm effectively getting all of the heat from their car and their exhaust actually blowing on the radiators of my car. And so this is just something that I've set up. Now, if I had just one configuration, I wouldn't be able to necessarily have these variations for each of the setup. And so here is how I've set up the dashes for the 2021 season, whenever that starts. Hopefully this was useful information. Hopefully that short demonstration was useful for you. In fact, I say short, but it was about 10 minutes long, so hopefully you were able to persevere with it. One of the things I did want to say is that people generally believe that being able to configure a dash is something that is reserved for those who've got data loggers like we used in the demonstration all the way through to the dashes. But you can actually configure any of the devices, and even an AiM Solo 2 has the ability to configure a few pages plus the LED lights. And so in the description box below, I'll put a video link to being able to configure AiM Solo 2, and then hopefully this video will help you get an idea in terms of how I'm thinking about my personal customization for the dash for me for this 2021 season. And so with that, I'll say thanks so much for watching this video. If you like it, please give a thumbs up. If there's something you didn't like or you want more clarification or more information on, please comment in the box below. And if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe. And with that, I'll say thanks so much for watching.